The room service call came in at 2:17 a.m. on a Wednesday in February. And that's where I should start, because everything before that was normal and everything after it wasn't. The call was from room 1409. The hotel system logged it automatically. A request for a pot of coffee, black, no sugar, and a club sandwich with no tomato. The request appeared on the service terminal at the front desk, the way any room service order does. Guest name, room number, time of request, itemized order. The guest name was Alderman R. The room was 1409. The problem was that room 1409 doesn't exist. Not in the way that matters. The 14th floor of the Bellworth Hotel has been closed for renovations since October. And before the renovation began, the rooms were stripped, no beds, no phones, no televisions, no minibars. The furniture was removed by a moving company and put into storage. The carpet was torn out. The bathroom fixtures were disconnected. There is no phone in room 1409. There is no way to place a room service call from room 1409 because there is nothing in room 1409 to call from. The Bellworth is a 22-story hotel in Midtown, built in 1962, renovated in stages over the decades, the way old hotels are. A floor or two at a time, rotating through the building so that the operational rooms can continue generating revenue while the closed ones are modernized. Right now, floors 13 and 14 are shut down. The renovation company has their equipment staged on 13. 14 is waiting for them to finish 13 before they move up. The guest floors run from 3 to 12 and 15 to 21. 22 is the mechanical penthouse. 1 and 2 are the lobby, restaurant, ballroom, conference facilities, and back-of-house operations. I work the overnight front desk shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I've been doing it for 3 years since I moved to the city, and before that, I did the same job at a smaller property upstate. It's the kind of work that suits a particular temperament. You need to be comfortable with quiet and with the occasional, unpredictable interruption. Most nights, the front desk between midnight and 6 a.m. handles maybe 4 or 5 interactions. A late check-in, a guest locked out, a noise complaint, a request for extra towels. The rest of the time, you're monitoring systems, processing the night audit, and doing 2 walkthroughs of the guest floors and the public areas. The walkthroughs are simple. You take the elevator or the stairs, you walk each guest floor corridor checking for anything out of place, propped fire doors, spills, noise issues, anything that needs attention. And then you check the public areas on 1 and 2. The pool on 3 if it's a property that has one. The Bellworth doesn't. And the back-of-house corridors. You're not expected to check the closed renovation floors. The renovation company locks those with their own access control. And the hotel's key cards are deactivated for 13 and 14. I couldn't get onto those floors with my hotel master key if I wanted to. So when the room service request from 1409 appeared on the terminal at 2:17 a.m., I assumed it was a system error. The hotel uses an older property management system called Opera, which is standard in the industry, but has known glitches, especially in properties where room inventory is being modified during renovations. Sometimes the system doesn't properly deactivate rooms that have been taken offline, and ghost entries appear. Phantom reservations, phantom billing folios, residual data from the last guest who occupied the room before it closed. I'd seen this a few times before, usually in the form of a minibar charge, posting to a room that had been empty for weeks, which happens when the system processes old data during the night audit cycle. You clear it out, note it in the log, and move on. I cleared the room service request and made a note. 217, room service call logged from 1409, system error, floor closed for renovation. Cleared. I didn't think about it again until the next night. Thursday, 2:23 a.m. Another request from 1409. This time, it was a wake-up call. The system showed a wake-up request for 6:30 a.m., placed at 2:23. Guest name, Alderman. R. I stared at the screen for a moment because of the guest name. System glitches don't typically generate the same guest name twice. They pull from residual data, and if the data is corrupted, you get fragments, partial names, room numbers that don't parse, timestamps that are clearly wrong. This was clean. Alderman R. Room 1409. A wake-up call for 6:30 a.m. I checked the reservation system. There was a folio for Alderman R. in room 1409. It showed a check-in date of February 11th, the previous Wednesday, the night the room service call had come in. It showed a room rate of $189 per night. It showed 6 nights of charges accrued. It showed the room service order from Wednesday, coffee, and a club sandwich posted in unbilled. The folio was active. It looked, in every respect, like a real guest account for a real person staying in a real room. I checked the check-in records for February 11th. I had worked that night. I had processed every check-in. There was no alderman. I checked the arrivals list for that date. No alderman. I checked the reservation log going back 30 days. No one by that name had reserved a room at the Bellworth. But the folio was there, in the system, with a check-in time of 11:42 p.m. on February 11th, and the system showed the check-in as having been processed by the front desk by my terminal. During my shift, according to Opera, I had checked this guest in. I hadn't. I would remember. I remember every check-in, not because I have an exceptional memory, but because check-ins after 11 p.m. are infrequent enough that each one is a distinct event in an otherwise uneventful night. I voided the wake-up call and put a note in the system flagging the folio as a data error. I pulled up the Opera admin screen and tried to delete the folio. The system wouldn't let me. Active folios with posted charges require a manager override to delete, and I don't have manager-level access. I sent an email to Sandra Chen, the front office manager, explaining the issue and asking her to purge the folio when she came in at 7 a.m. I went back to my work. At 2:45 a.m., a housekeeping ticket appeared in the system for room 1409. Turn down service. Fresh towels? Bed made? Water carafe refilled? The request was marked as a standing nightly order, which means someone or something in the system had set it up as a recurring ticket. I voided it. At 3:10 a.m., a Do Not Disturb flag was activated. For 1409, I removed it. At 3:30 a.m., the in-room entertainment system logged a pay-per-view purchase to the 1409 folio. I couldn't void this one because it was a third-party charge that passes through a different system. I noted it and moved on. Sandra deleted the folio the next morning. She said the system had been acting up since the renovation rooms were taken offline, and she'd had to purge phantom data before. She didn't seem concerned. I asked her if the name Alderman meant anything, if it was a former guest, a VIP, anyone in the hotel's history. She checked the guest database going back 5 years, which is as far as our current system retains searchable records. No alderman. She said it was probably corrupted data from another folio, and not to worry about it. The next Tuesday night, February 18th, I was doing my 1 a.m. walkthrough of the guest floors. I take the elevator to 21 and work my way down by stairs, checking each corridor. It takes about 30 minutes. The guest floors were all normal. Quiet, dimly lit with the overnight corridor lighting. the low hum of the HVAC system behind the walls, the occasional sound of a television from behind a door. I reached 12, checked the corridor, and continued down the stairwell toward the lobby. The stairwell passes every floor, including the closed ones. The fire stairs access all floors regardless of renovation status, because you can't disable fire egress. The stair doors on 13 and 14 lock from the corridor side. You can't enter the floor from the stairs without a key, but you can enter the stairwell from the floor, which is required by fire code. As I passed the 14th floor landing, I stopped. There was light coming from under the stair door. The gap between the bottom of the door and the floor is about ½ an inch, and through it I could see a warm, yellowish glow. Not the bright, flat light of construction work lamps. Not the cold flicker of fluorescent tubes in an empty corridor. The warm, amber-toned light of hotel corridor sconces. The decorative fixtures that line the hallways on the guest floors. The ones that cast a low, inviting light designed to make the hallway feel like an interior of someone's home rather than an institutional passage. Those fixtures had been disconnected on 14. The electrical contractor had isolated the circuits for the renovation. The corridor should be dark. I stood on the landing and looked at the light under the door. I tried the handle. Locked, as expected. My key card wouldn't activate it. I leaned down and looked through the gap. I could see a narrow slice of carpet. The corridor on 14 should not have carpet. It was torn out in October, but through the ½ inch gap under the fire door, I could see carpet. Dark patterned carpet. The kind the Bellworth uses on its guest floors. The burgundy and gold pattern that was installed during the last full renovation in 2016. I could see the base of the opposite wall and the warm light reflecting off it. I went back to the front desk and checked the system. A new folio had been created for Alderman R. Room 1409. Check-in date February 18th, 1:04 a.m. Processed at the front desk terminal, my terminal. While I was on the 12th floor, 7 minutes into my walkthrough, the system logged a check-in that I did not perform. The folio was active. The room rate was $189. A room service order had already been placed. Coffee, black, no sugar, and a club sandwich with no tomato. Placed at 1:07 a.m. I sat at the desk and looked at the screen. The order was in the queue. It was a legitimate order in the system with a room number, a guest name, and itemized selections. If the kitchen were staffed at this hour, it's not. Room service ends at 11 p.m. Someone would be making that sandwich right now. The system didn't know the difference between this order and any other. To the system, Alderman R was a guest in room 1409 who wanted coffee and a sandwich. I didn't void it this time. I don't know exactly why. I think it was because I wanted to see what happened next. The order sat in the queue with a status of pending preparation. At 1:32 a.m., the status changed to in preparation. The kitchen was closed. There was no one in the kitchen. I checked. I walked back to the kitchen, which is accessible from the back-of-house corridor behind the lobby. The kitchen was dark, locked, the stainless steel surfaces reflecting the green glow of the exit signs. No one was there. I went back to the terminal. At 1:47 a.m., the order status changed to delivered. The system logged a delivery to room 1409 at 1:47 a.m. with a signature capture, a small digital scrawl on the delivery log that read, R. Alderman. I printed the delivery confirmation. I have it. It shows the order, the room, the time, and the signature. The signature is fluid and consistent, the kind of practiced signature that someone uses for routine transactions. It doesn't look generated or random. It looks like a person's Real signature. I called Sandra at home. It was just after 2 a.m., and I know that was inconsiderate, but I didn't feel that I could wait until morning. She answered on the fourth ring, groggy, and I told her the phantom folio had reappeared and that the system was now processing orders and logging deliveries for a room on a closed floor. She was quiet for a moment and then said she would call the opera support line in the morning and have them run a diagnostic on the room inventory module. She said not to worry about it. She said the system was old and these things happened. She asked me not to call her at 2 a.m. again unless someone was actually in danger. I said I understood. I went back to the stairwell at 2:30 a.m. I stood on the 14th floor landing. The light was still there, under the door, warm, amber, steady. I crouched down and looked through the gap. Carpet, wall, light. And this time, at the far end of what I could see, at the very edge of the visible slice of corridor, a shadow. Not moving. Not a person-shaped shadow. A rectangular shadow, like the shadow of a room service cart parked against the wall. I don't have access to the 14th floor. My key card doesn't work. The renovation contractor's key card does, but I don't have one. And the contractor's office is locked. The fire door locks from the corridor side. I could not get through that door short of breaking it down, which I was not going to do because I am a hotel employee and the door is a fire-rated assembly, and destroying it would be a code violation and a career-ending decision. So I stood on the landing and I looked at the light under the door and the shadow at the far end and the carpet that shouldn't be there. And then I went back to the front desk and I sat down. The opera support technician called Sandra the next morning and ran a remote diagnostic. Sandra told me the results at shift change. The technician found no data corruption, no phantom records, no residual guest data. He said the room inventory was clean and all rooms on floors 13 and 14 were correctly flagged as out of service. Sandra asked him about the Alderman folio. He said there was no active folio under that name. She showed him the printout of the delivery confirmation I'd given her. He said he couldn't explain it, but that it was probably a local terminal issue, and he recommended clearing the cache. She cleared the cache. That night, Wednesday, February 19th, I checked the system when I came on shift at 11 p.m. Number Alderman folio. Floors 13 and 14 showed as out of service. Everything was clean. At 11:42 p.m., the same time the original check-in had been logged, a new folio appeared. Alderman, R Room 1409. Check-in processed at the front desk. My terminal. I was sitting at the terminal when it happened. I watched it appear. The screen updated with the soft chime that Opera uses to indicate a new check-in. And there it was. Guest name, room number, rate, folio number. I hadn't touched the keyboard. I hadn't clicked anything. The check-in processed itself. I started keeping a detailed record of every system event associated with room 1409. I kept it in a notebook, not in the hotel's digital log, because I wasn't confident that the hotel's systems were reliable anymore. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern was consistent. Every night, between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, a folio appeared for Alderman R in room 1409. Every night between 1 o'clock and 2 a.m., service requests appeared. Room service, always the same order, coffee and a club sandwich. A wake-up call for 6:30 a.m. A housekeeping ticket for turn-down service. Every night the orders progressed through the system, placed, prepared, delivered. Despite the kitchen being closed and no staff on any of the closed floors. Every morning, Sandra or the day shift purged the folio, and it was gone by the time the hotel was fully operational. And every night it came back. The light on the 14th floor was there every time I checked. Always warm, always steady, always visible through the gap under the fire door. I checked it on 12 consecutive nights. On the 4th night, March 1st, I noticed something else. The temperature on the stairwell landing at 14 was different from the landings above and below it. Warmer, not by a lot, maybe 4 or 5 degrees, but noticeable. The stairwell on the upper floors is kept at about 62 degrees, which is standard for unoccupied spaces. The 14th floor landing felt like 67 or 68, the kind of temperature you'd maintain in an occupied guest corridor. I held my hand near the gap under the door. Warm air was flowing from the corridor into the stairwell. The way air flows from a heated space into a cooler one, the 14th floor corridor was heated. I reported the temperature anomaly to the engineering department. Carlos Vega, the chief engineer, checked the HVAC zone controls for 14. He told me the zone was off. The thermostats were disconnected. The air handling unit serving floors 13 and 14 was running in ventilation-only mode, per the renovation protocol, circulating unheated air to prevent mold during construction. There was no active heating on 14. I told him the landing was warm. He said he'd check the ductwork for a crossover leak from an adjacent zone. He checked and found nothing. He put a temperature logger on the 14th floor landing and said he'd review the data in a week. The temperature logger data, which Carlos showed me on March 8th, was unremarkable from 7 a.m. to approximately 11:30 p.m. each day. The landing temperature matched the stairwell average, 61 to 63 degrees. Starting at about 11:30 p.m., the temperature rose steadily, reaching 67 to 69 degrees by midnight and holding there until approximately 6:15 a.m., when it dropped back to the baseline over about 20 minutes. The warm period corresponded almost exactly with my overnight shift. The 14th floor was heating itself at night and cooling down before the day staff arrived. Carlos couldn't explain it. He said he'd have the HVAC contractor take a look. The contractor came, found nothing wrong, billed the hotel for a service call, and left. On March 5th, I tried something different. Instead of voiding the room service order when it appeared, I assembled the order myself. The kitchen was closed, but I have access to the back-of-house pantry, where we keep supplies for the executive lounge: coffee, bread, basic sandwich ingredients. At 1:15 a.m., when the order for room 1409 appeared, coffee, club sandwich, no tomato, I made the coffee, made the sandwich as close to spec as I could, put them on a room service tray from the kitchen storage, and took the tray to the 14th floor landing. I set the tray on the floor in front of the fire door. I stepped back and stood on the half landing between 13 and 14, where I could see the tray but was about 15 feet away. Nothing happened for about 12 minutes. I stood there in the stairwell, which was quiet except for the ventilation and the distant hum of the elevator machinery above. The light under the door was steady. The tray sat on the concrete landing. Then the delivery status in the system changed. I had my phone open to the Opera mobile interface, and at 1:31 a.m., the order for 1409 updated from pending preparation to delivered. The signature appeared on the digital log: R. Alderman. I looked at the tray. It was still there. The coffee was still there. The sandwich was still there. The system said the order had been delivered and signed for, and the tray was sitting untouched on the landing in front of a locked door. I went down to the front desk, confirmed the delivery log entry, and went back to the landing at about 1:50 a.m. The tray was gone. The landing was empty. The floor was clean. No crumbs, no coffee ring, no water condensation from the carafe. The tray, the coffee pot, the plate, the sandwich, the napkin, the silverware. Gone. The door was still locked. I tried it. Locked. I crouched and looked under the door. Carpet, warm light, and, at the far end of the visible corridor, the shadow of the room service cart, in the same position as before, or perhaps slightly closer. I left the tray's disappearance out of the official log. I wrote it in my notebook. I wasn't sure what to say officially. Placed room service tray on stair landing, tray disappeared, is not something you put in a hotel log if you want to keep your job. I wrote, 2 o'clock, stairwell check, floors 1, 2, 1, 5, no issues. That's what I wrote. No issues. The escalation over the next 2 weeks was not dramatic. It was administrative. On March 9th, a laundry request appeared in the system for room 1409. 2 dress shirts, 1 pair of trousers, press and return. The request was detailed, specifying light starch on the shirts and a crease in the trousers. On March 11th, a concierge request, dinner reservation for 1 at an Italian restaurant 4 blocks from the hotel, 7:30 p.m., March 12th. Name, Alderman. On March 13th, a maintenance request. The bathroom faucet in 1409 was dripping. Please send engineering. Each request appeared in the appropriate system queue, properly formatted, with the correct guest information and room number. Each one looked identical to a legitimate request from a legitimate guest. I filled the laundry request. I don't know why. I think I wanted to see what would happen. I took 2 dress shirts and a pair of trousers from the hotel's lost and found storage, items that had been unclaimed for over 90 days and were slated for donation. I had them pressed by the overnight laundry attendant who works in the basement and doesn't ask questions about room numbers. I put them in a garment bag and left them on the 14th floor landing at 2 a.m. I checked at 3 a.m. They were gone. I made the dinner reservation. I called the restaurant during business hours and booked a table for 1 under Alderman for 7:30 p.m. on March 12th. I'm not sure what I expected. I half thought about going to the restaurant at 7:30 to see if anyone showed up. I didn't. I checked with the restaurant the next day and asked if Mr. Alderman had kept his reservation. The hostess said yes. He had dined alone, had the veal, left a generous tip. She said he was very pleasant. I asked her to describe him. She said he was an older gentleman, well-dressed, quiet. She said he'd said he was staying at the Bellworth. She asked if I wanted to leave a message for him. I said no. An older gentleman, well-dressed, quiet, staying at the Bellworth, dining alone at 7:30 p.m. at a restaurant 4 blocks away. A person, a real person, eating real food in a real restaurant, charged to a folio at a hotel where his room is on a closed floor with no furniture, no phone, no running water, no functional anything. A person who checks in every night at 11:42 p.m. through a system that no one operates, who orders the same room service every night from a kitchen that is closed, who requests laundry and concierge services and maintenance for a faucet in a bathroom that has been disconnected from the plumbing. A person who leaves the building, walks 4 blocks, eats dinner, and returns to a room that does not, in any physical sense, exist as a hotel room. I checked the restaurant's charge. It had posted to the 1409 folio in Opera, along with 6 nights of room charges, the accumulated room service orders, and the laundry. The folio balance was $2,840. The charges were itemized and correct. The tax calculations were accurate. The folio was, in every administrative sense, a real and valid hotel bill for a guest who had been staying at the Bellworth for almost a month. On March 14th, I did something I'd been avoiding. I went to the 14th floor during the day. I asked Carlos to let me in. He has a renovation access key. And told him I wanted to check the temperature situation. He let me into the stairwell door at about 2 p.m. The corridor was dark. The sconces were off. The carpet was gone. Bare concrete subfloor, same as it had been since October. The walls were stripped to drywall in some places. Bare studs in others. There were renovation materials stacked along the walls, drywall sheets, buckets of joint compound, rolls of carpet padding. It looked like a construction zone. It looked exactly like a closed floor undergoing renovation. Room 1409 was at the far end of the corridor, on the right. The door was propped open with a 5-gallon bucket. Inside the room, the space was gutted. No bed, no furniture, no fixtures. The bathroom was roughed in, exposed pipes, no sink, no faucet. There was a light dusting of drywall dust on the subfloor. It was cold, maybe 58 degrees. It smelled like new construction, joint compound, sawdust, the chemical scent of PVC cement. There was nothing in this room. There was no one on this floor. The space was exactly what it should be. An empty, partially demolished hotel room on a closed floor. I stood in the doorway of 1409 and looked at the bare subfloor and the exposed studs and the disconnected plumbing, and I tried to reconcile it with the warm light under the stairwell door. The carpet I'd seen through the gap, the room service tray that vanished, the laundry that vanished, the restaurant reservation that was kept by a real person. I asked Carlos if he'd noticed anything unusual about 14. He said no. I asked if any of the renovation crew had mentioned anything. He said the crew chief had commented that 14 was the cleanest job site he'd ever worked on, that every morning when they came in, the floor was spotless, no dust, no debris, as if someone had cleaned overnight. Carlos said he figured the overnight cleaning crew was being extra thorough. I told him we don't have an overnight cleaning crew for the renovation floors. He shrugged and said maybe it was the ventilation system, the overnight cleaning of the 14th floor. I thought about this. The renovation crew arrives at 7 a.m. and finds a clean floor. My shift ends at 7 a.m. The warm period on the temperature logger runs from about 11:30 p.m. to 6:15 a.m. The folio check-in happens at 11:42 p.m. The system activity runs throughout my shift, and every morning when the day shift arrives and the renovation crew starts work, everything is normal. The floor is cold, dark, empty, and clean. Whatever happens on 14 happens only at night, only during my shift, and it leaves no trace except data in a computer system that the day staff routinely deletes as an error. On March 18th, a new request appeared in the system at 2:04 a.m. It wasn't room service or laundry or a wake-up call. It was a message. Opera has a guest messaging function. Guests can send messages through the in-room system to the front desk, and the messages appear on the front desk terminal. The message was from room 1409. It read, "Thank you for the sandwich. The coffee was excellent. I appreciate the attention to detail. R. Alderman." I read it 3 times. It was a thank you note, a polite, specific thank you note from a guest to the front desk, the kind of message that gets saved in a guest's profile for future stays, the kind that a hotel uses in training to show what good service looks like. It referenced the sandwich I had made on March 5th, 13 days earlier, the coffee I had brewed from the executive lounge supplies, the tray I had assembled and left on the stairwell landing, Alderman was thanking me for the room service. Specifically me. Not the kitchen, not the room service department. Me. The overnight clerk who made the food and left it on the stairs. 2 nights later, another message. The shirts were done well. Please convey my thanks to whoever handles the laundry. Also, the faucet is still dripping. I know the plumbing situation is complicated, but if there's anything that can be done, I'd appreciate it. R.A. The faucet. The maintenance request from March 13th. The dripping faucet in room 1409. The plumbing on 14 is disconnected. There is no water in the pipes. There is no faucet. It was removed during demolition. An alderman was asking me to fix a drip in a faucet that doesn't exist, in a bathroom that's been gutted, in a room where the subfloor is exposed concrete and the walls are bare studs. And he was acknowledging that the plumbing situation is complicated, as if he knew that the floor was under renovation, as if he was aware that his room was not in a normal condition, and he was asking me to help anyway. I don't know how to describe the feeling this produced. It was not fear, not exactly. It was something closer to the feeling of professional obligation colliding with impossibility. I am trained to respond to guest requests. It is the core of my job. A guest has a problem. You fix it. A guest sends a message. You respond. A guest thanks you. You thank them back. The entire structure of hotel work is built on the premise that when a guest needs something, you provide it. And you don't question whether the guest should be there, or whether the room is real, or whether the request makes sense. You just respond. That's the job. And here was a guest, polite, specific, appreciative, making reasonable requests through the correct system. And every part of my training said, respond, help, serve. I responded to the message. I typed, "Thank you, Mr. Alderman. I'm glad the coffee was to your liking. I'll look into the faucet situation and get back to you." I sent it through the Opera messaging system. I don't know where it went. I don't know what received it. The system showed the message as delivered. At 2:40 a.m., a reply appeared. Much appreciated. No rush on the faucet. I understand the building has its complexities. I'm in no hurry. I've been here a long time. I've been here a long time. I've read that sentence many times since. It could mean he's been a guest for a while. It could mean something else. I didn't ask for clarification. I didn't know how to. The messages became a regular part of the overnight routine. Every few nights, Alderman sent a note through the system. Sometimes a request, sometimes a comment, sometimes just a pleasantry. He asked about the weather. He asked whether the restaurant on the ground floor still served the walnut salad. The restaurant hasn't served a walnut salad in my 3 years here, but I checked with the daytime F&B manager, who said it was on the menu until 2019. Alderman asked about it as if he'd had it recently. He asked whether the concierge could arrange theater tickets. He asked for a copy of the morning paper to be left outside his door. Each request was specific, reasonable, and polite. Each one came through the proper system channel. Each one was, in every operational sense, a legitimate guest request. I started fulfilling them. Not all of them. I couldn't arrange theater tickets or fix a non-existent faucet. But I started leaving a newspaper outside the 14th floor stairwell door each morning before the end of my shift. I left it on the landing, folded, the way we leave them for VIP guests. Every morning it was gone by the time the renovation crew arrived. I left a bottle of water one night, gone. A chocolate from the turned-down amenity supply, gone. Each time, a thank you message appeared in the system within hours. On April 2nd, Sandra called me into her office before my shift. She said she'd been reviewing the opera logs and had noticed an unusual volume of messaging activity from a room on a closed floor. She'd found the Alderman folio, which I had stopped deleting weeks ago, and the string of messages between me and the guest. She asked me what was going on. I told her the truth, that the system was generating a guest folio for a room on the closed floor every night, that the folio included service requests that processed themselves through the system, and that I had been communicating with whoever or whatever was on the other end of the messaging function. She looked at me for a long time. She asked if I was feeling all right. I said I was. She asked if I was aware that there was no guest in room 1409. I said I was aware of what the room looked like during the day. She asked what that meant. I told her about the light under the door, the temperature, the carpet visible through the gap, the trays and newspapers that disappeared from the landing. She said she would check the floor herself. She went up to 14 with Carlos that afternoon. She reported back to me at shift change. The floor was a construction zone. Dark, cold, empty. Room 1409 was a gutted shell. Number carpet, no light, no evidence of occupancy, no newspaper, no tray, no chocolate wrapper. She said she was reassigning me to the day shift for a week for rest, and she was calling opera support to do a full system audit. I worked days for a week. The opera audit found nothing wrong. Sandra checked the system each night and reported no Alderman folio, no messages, no service requests. The overnight clerk who covered my shifts, a guy named Paul who works relief, said the nights were uneventful, no system anomalies, no light on 14, nothing. I went back to overnights on April 10th. At 11:42 p.m., the folio appeared. Alderman R room 1409. At 11:48 p.m., a message came through. Welcome back. I missed the coffee. I sat at the terminal and read the message, and I felt something that I think was relief, which is not a rational response, and I know that. But the Bellworth at night has a specific quality, a quietness that borders on emptiness, a sense of being the only person awake in a building designed for hundreds. For 3 years, that emptiness was the baseline of my working life, and now there was someone else. Someone who said thank you for the coffee and asked about the walnut salad and wanted a newspaper in the morning. Someone who was unfailingly courteous, who never complained about the faucet despite asking about it twice, who tipped generously at restaurants and was described by a hostess as very pleasant. Someone who existed verifiably in a room that during the day was bare concrete and exposed pipes, but who at night checked in and ordered room service and sent messages to the front desk and lived in every system the hotel used to track such things. As a guest, I resumed leaving the newspaper. I resumed making the coffee and sandwich and leaving them on the landing. The trays continued to disappear. The messages continued. The folio accumulated charges. On April 15th, the balance reached $6,200. On April 22nd, it was over $8,000. Alderman never asked about the bill. The system never generated an invoice. The charges accrued in a folio that no one except me ever saw for more than a few hours before it was deleted during the morning audit. On April 28th, Alderman sent a message that was different from the others. It read, I notice you haven't been up to the 14th floor in some time. I understand your hesitation. The door will be open tonight if you'd like to visit. You've been very kind, and I think it's time you saw the room. The door will be open. For 5 months, I had been unable to access the 14th floor because my key card didn't work on the renovation locks. The fire door locked from the corridor side. I had no way in. And now I was being invited. I went to the stairwell at 2 a.m. The 14th floor landing was warm, maybe 68 degrees. The light under the door was there, warm, amber, steady. I put my hand on the door handle. I pressed it. The door opened. It swung inward smoothly, without resistance, into a hotel corridor. I need to describe what I saw, because it's the image I cannot get out of my mind, and it's the reason I'm writing this. The 14th floor corridor was intact, not renovated, not under construction. Intact, as in operational, as in it looked like any other guest floor in the Bellworth. The carpet was down, the burgundy and gold pattern, clean and unworn. The sconces were lit, casting that warm amber light. The walls were papered with the same pattern used on the guest floors. The ceiling tiles were in place. The corridor smelled like hotel, that specific mixture of clean linen furniture polish and the faintest trace of fragrance from the hallway diffuser. The doors to the guest rooms were closed, each one bearing a brass room number plate, 1401, 1403. The hall table near the elevator lobby had a vase of fresh flowers on it. Fresh. I could smell them. I walked the corridor. My footsteps were silent on the carpet. The HVAC was running. I could feel the faint movement of warm air from the ceiling vents. The Do Not Disturb sign was hanging on the door of 1409. I stood in front of it. The door was like any other door. On any other guest floor, heavy wood veneer, brass handle, electronic lock with a small light that glowed green. I could hear, from inside the room, the faint sound of a television at low volume. Someone was in there. Someone was watching television at 2 a.m. in a room that 12 hours ago was a gutted shell. There was a room service tray on the floor outside the door, the kind we leave for pickup. On it was an empty coffee pot, a plate with crumbs and a crust of bread, a folded napkin, and a signed check. The signature read, R. Alderman. The check was from the hotel's room service system, printed on Bellworth letterhead, dated that evening. The total was $34.50. Coffee, club sandwich, no tomato, plus tax and an 18% gratuity calculated to the penny. I picked up the tray. It was real. The plate was real. The china we use with the Bellworth crest on the rim. The coffee pot was warm. The crumbs were real. The check was real. I held a room service tray that had been used by a guest on a floor that does not exist during the day, in a room that has no furniture, no plumbing, no electricity, and no floor covering. The tray was as real as anything I've ever held. The weight of it in my hands was ordinary. The ceramic was smooth. The coffee smelled like coffee. I did not knock on the door. I don't know what stopped me. I think it was the Do Not Disturb sign. I've been doing this job for years, and the one rule that is inviolable is that you do not knock on a door with a DND sign. You don't, because behind that door is a guest who has asked not to be disturbed, and the guest's wish is the beginning and end of the matter. Even here, even now, the training held. The sign was on the door, and I respected it. I took the tray back to the stairwell. I descended to the lobby. I put the tray in the kitchen wash area. I went back to the front desk and sat down. On the terminal, a new message. Thank you for picking up the tray. Good night. I checked the 14th floor the next afternoon with Carlos, who let me in. Bare concrete, exposed studs, drywall dust, no carpet, no sconces, no flowers, no tray, no sign on the door. Room 1409 was a gutted box with daylight coming through the window and a 5-gallon bucket propping the door open. I stood in it and tried to smell hotel, and I smelled joint compound. I tried to feel the carpet, and I felt concrete. The room was empty. The corridor was dark. Everything that I had seen at 2 a.m. was gone, or had never been there, except that I had carried a tray down 12 flights of stairs and put it in the kitchen wash area, and when I checked the wash area, the tray was still there, and the plate still had crumbs on it, and the coffee pot still had a film of dried coffee in the bottom. The tray was real. Whatever else was happening, the tray was real. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't been back to the 14th floor at night. The folio still appears every evening at 11:42 p.m. The messages still come. Alderman still orders coffee and a sandwich. The system still shows the order as prepared and delivered without anyone preparing or delivering it. The wake-up call for 6:30 a.m. still generates every night. The temperature on the 14th floor landing still rises after 11:30 p.m. and falls before 6:15 a.m. 2 days ago, on May 15th, something changed. A new folio appeared at 11:42 p.m. Right on schedule, but it wasn't for room 1409. It was for room 1411. The guest name was Peterson, DM. The check-in was processed at my terminal. The room rate was $189. A room service order appeared at 1:05 a.m. Tea, Earl Grey, and a Caesar salad, no anchovies. A wake-up call was set for 7 a.m. A housekeeping ticket was generated for turn-down service. I checked the stairwell. The light under the 14th floor door was there, same as always, but it seemed brighter, not warmer, brighter. As if the corridor beyond the door was more fully lit, as if more sconces were on, as if more of the floor was in use. At 1:30 a.m., a message arrived from room 1411. Good evening. Mr. Alderman recommended this hotel very highly. I look forward to a pleasant stay. D. M. Peterson. Recommended. The word sits in my mind and won't leave. Alderman recommended the hotel. To whom? Through what channel? In what world does a guest who exists only in a computer system and a corridor that materializes after midnight recommend a hotel to another guest? In what world does that recommendation result in a new folio, a new name, a new room service order, a new set of preferences? In what world does a second guest check into a second room on a closed floor in a building that is under renovation, and how long before there is a third? The folio for Peterson, DM, was deleted during the morning audit on May 16th, along with the Alderman folio, along with all the service requests, along with the messages. Sandra or whoever ran the audit would have seen them as system errors. By 8 a.m., there was no trace of either guest in the system. By 11:42 p.m., they were both back. 2 folios, 2 guests, 2 rooms on a floor that doesn't exist between 7 a.m. and 11:30 p.m. I checked the system for a third. There wasn't one. Not yet. Last night, I stood on the 14th floor landing, and I could hear, through the door, the faint sounds of a hotel corridor at night, the hum of the HVAC, the distant ping of an elevator, the barely perceptible sound of a television from behind a closed door, and something I hadn't heard before, a second television, further down the corridor, from the direction of 1411. 2 guests, 2 rooms, 2 sets of sounds bleeding through a fire door that, during the day, opens onto a construction site. This morning, I found something on my desk that I need to mention. It was a comment card, the kind we leave in guest rooms, a small folded card with the Bellworth logo that asks guests to rate their stay. It was filled out. The handwriting was precise and unhurried. The ratings were all excellent. In the comments section it read, "Outstanding service, particularly from the overnight staff. The personal attention is rare and deeply appreciated. I will be extending my stay indefinitely. R. Alderman." The card was on my desk when I came in for my shift. It was not there when I left that morning. No one on the day staff remembers putting it there. The card is a current Bellworth comment card, the same style we stock in the guest rooms on the operational floors. I'm holding it now. The paper is real. The ink is real. The handwriting is consistent with the signature I've seen on room service checks and delivery confirmations for 5 months. I will be extending my stay indefinitely. The hotel has 340 rooms across 18 operational floors. Floors 13 and 14 have 28 rooms each. That's 56 rooms on the renovation floors. 56 rooms that are, during the day, gutted shells. 56 rooms that, between approximately 11:30 p.m. and 6:15 a.m., might be something else. 2 of them are now occupied. The rate is $189 per night. The coffee is black with no sugar. The faucet drips. The walnut salad is no longer on the menu. The newspaper is folded on the landing every morning and gone by dawn. I go to work tonight at 11 p.m. Alderman will check in at 11:42. Peterson will follow shortly after. There may be a third name tonight. There may not. Either way, the orders will come in and the system will process them. And the light under the door will be warm and steady. And the corridor will smell like hotel. And somewhere on the 14th floor, a guest will be watching television in a room that doesn't exist. And I will be downstairs at my terminal doing my job. Because the requests are legitimate. And the system says the guests are there. And the training says you respond. And the sign on the door says, "Do not disturb." And I don't know what happens when all 56 rooms are full. But I think the renovation will never be finished. And I think the 14th floor will not need it. I think it's already a hotel up there. I think it always was. I just couldn't see it until someone checked in.